The exile. Commander Elena Reyes stood rigid on the bridge of the Earth flagship Horizon, her dark eyes fixed on the massive holographic display. The great chamber of the Galactic Council filled the screen. Thousands of alien representatives seated in concentric rings around the central podium. The 7 elders of the primordial races occupied the inner circle, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. The chief elder, a towering Arcturian with luminescent skin that pulsed with each word, raised his 4 arms for silence. The chamber immediately fell quiet, the rustle of appendages and translation devices fading to nothing. This council has deliberated for 3 standard cycles. The elder's voice boomed through the ship's translation system. We have reviewed all testimony and evidence regarding the species known as humans. Our decision is unanimous. Elena's second-in-command, Major Takashi Himura, moved to stand beside her. His face remained impassive, but Elena could sense the tension radiating from him. They had both known this moment was coming. Humanity represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability, continued the elder. In merely 2 centuries, since achieving faster-than-light travel, they have accelerated their technological development at a rate that violates all known developmental patterns. Their neural architecture displays disturbing anomalies. Their emotional responses are erratic. Their history is dominated by conflict. On a secondary screen, Elena watched Earth's Ambassador Chen standing in the chamber center. Despite being surrounded by creatures from 1,000 worlds, Chen maintained perfect composure. Furthermore, the elder's voice grew harder. Humans have demonstrated a dangerous tendency to reverse engineer and improve upon technologies that were shared with them in good faith. The incident at the Proxima Research Hub, where humans modified Calderon quantum converters beyond their intended parameters, is but one example of many. Elena winced. The Proxima incident had been an accident. A human scientist trying to improve efficiency had inadvertently created a cascade effect that temporarily disrupted subspace communications across 3 sectors. No one had been injured, but the Council races had been horrified by how quickly humans had altered technology that had remained unchanged for millennia. Therefore, by the authority vested in this Council by the Galactic Charter, we hereby declare humanity to be a quarantine species. All human vessels and citizens must return to their home system within 30 standard days. A blockade will be established around the Sol system. Any human found outside this quarantine after the grace period will be subject to immediate detention. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. Honorable elders, humanity has contributed significantly to medical research, artistic exchange, and frontier defense in our brief time among the galactic community. We ask for reconsideration. The decision is final, interrupted the elder. This is not a punishment but a safety measure. Humanity may reapply for evaluation in 100 standard years, provided they demonstrate evolutionary stability and adherence to natural development patterns. The connection terminated abruptly, leaving the bridge of the horizon in stunned silence. Orders, Commander, asked Major Himura quietly. Elena took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Transmit emergency recall codes to all Earth vessels. Priority 1 message to Earth Central. Operation Homecoming is now in effect. She turned to face her crew, seeing the shock and anger on their faces. We have 30 days to bring everyone home. Let's move. The next 4 weeks were a blur of desperate activity. The Horizon and other Earth vessels raced across Council space, evacuating research outposts, diplomatic missions, and trade settlements. They worked around the clock, pushing their ships to the limit to reach the furthest human outposts before the deadline. Elena personally oversaw the evacuation of the Ta City scientific base, where 300 human researchers had been collaborating with Nevidian biologists on viral countermeasures. The Nevidians had protested the evacuation order, but Council enforcers had already arrived to ensure compliance. This is madness, Dr. Eliza Raman, the lead human scientist, had told Elena as they supervised the hasty packing of irreplaceable samples. We were 3 months away from a breakthrough on interspecies viral transmission. Do they understand what they're throwing away? They're afraid of us, Alina had replied simply. And fear makes for poor policy decisions. On the 29th day, the horizon crossed back into Sol space with the last group of evacuees. Behind them, massive council vessels moved into position, forming the first layer of what would become a multi-tiered blockade. Alina watched on the sensors as more ships arrived each hour, vessels with technology far beyond what humans had been permitted to access or study. Admiral Marcus Okafor, the newly appointed head of Earth Defense, called a meeting of all senior military and scientific leadership the moment the evacuation was complete. They gathered in the underground command center beneath the Olympus Mons colony on Mars. "The blockade is complete," he announced, gesturing to the holographic display showing council ships surrounding the Sol system. Long-range sensors indicate they've deployed phase-shift satellites at all major jump points. We are effectively cut off from the rest of the galaxy. "What about the colonies in the Centauri system?" asked General Cardoza of the Mars Defense Force. "The Council is allowing us to maintain them, since they were established before first contact," Okafor replied. "But they've extended the blockade to include Alpha Centauri. We can travel between Sol and Centauri, but nowhere else." "So that's it," snapped Dr. Raman, who had been invited to represent the scientific community. "We just accept being prisoners in our own system." Alina studied the faces around the table. Anger, disbelief, fear, but she also saw something else. Determination. Admiral Okafor's expression was grim but resolved. "No, Doctor. That is not it at all." He tapped a command, and the holographic display changed to show several classified Earth facilities. "For the past 5 years, since the Proxima incident, we've been preparing for this possibility. Operation Phoenix is now activated." Alina leaned forward. "Phoenix? I wasn't briefed on this." "Need-to-know basis only, Commander," Okafor said. "And now you need to know. The Council races believe they understand human psychology. They think this quarantine will force us to slow down, to reflect on our reckless tendencies. They expect us to emerge in a century as a chastened, compliant species ready to follow their rules." He smiled thinly. "They fundamentally misunderstand what drives humanity. Restrictions don't suppress human innovation. They accelerate it." The Admiral gestured, and the hologram changed again, displaying technological schematics that Alina didn't recognize. "For generations, we've been developing our technology along paths the Council showed us," Okafor continued. "We've been following their lead, building on their foundations. But there are other paths, approaches they've never explored because of their evolutionary and cultural constraints." Dr. Raman's eyes widened as she studied the schematics. "These propulsion theories, they violate the Council's laws of development. They violate the Council's understanding of physics," corrected a new voice. An older woman in civilian clothes entered the room. "Dr. Sofia Novak, Theoretical Physics Division." She introduced herself. "What you're looking at is based on mathematical models that the Council races consider impossible because their neural architecture processes mathematical relationships differently than ours." Alina stared at the schematics with new understanding. "You're saying humans can conceptualize theoretical frameworks that they physically cannot?" "Precisely," Dr. Novak nodded. "The Council races evolved along certain cognitive pathways. Their mathematics, their science, all follow specific patterns, but human brains develop differently. We make cognitive leaps they find disturbing. We see connections they cannot. And that's why they fear us," Major Himura said quietly. Admiral Okafor nodded. "The quarantine gives us something we've never had: time and motivation to develop completely human technologies without Council oversight or limitations." Alina looked around the room, seeing the implications dawn on everyone's faces. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning. "How long before the Council realizes what's happening?" she asked. "They're watching for conventional technological development," Okafor replied. "They won't be looking for approaches that their own scientists consider impossible. Dr. Raman straightened in her chair. My team was working on neural interface technology before the evacuation. The Navidians couldn't grasp why our approach worked when it contradicted their established principles. If we could continue that research, you'll have unlimited resources, the Admiral assured her. All of you will. Every scientific mind, every engineer, every visionary. This quarantine was meant to contain us. Instead, it will unleash us. As the meeting continued, plans taking shape around her, Alina felt a strange mix of emotions. The exile was unjust, rooted in fear rather than reason. But perhaps it was also necessary, not for the galaxy's protection, but for humanity's evolution. Outside the windows of the Mars facility, the red landscape stretched to the horizon, where the first domes of the expanding colony shimmered in the thin sunlight. Beyond that horizon lay the Sol system, and beyond the blockade, the galaxy waited. The Council thought they had contained humanity. In time, they would learn how wrong they were. 3 years passed. From the perspective of the Council blockade ships, the human quarantine appeared to be proceeding as expected. Human vessels stayed within their permitted boundaries. Communications remained civil, if minimal. Observation posts reported steady development within Sol and Centauri, but nothing that suggested humans were attempting to challenge the quarantine. The Council received regular reports and gradually reduced surveillance resources, reassigning ships to more pressing matters. The human problem, it seemed, had been successfully managed. They were wrong. Deep beneath Europa's icy surface, Commander Alina Reyes walked through a facility that officially did not exist. The corridor lights pulsed softly as she approached a security checkpoint, where her neural signature was scanned and verified. "Commander, they're ready for you," said the lieutenant on duty, gesturing toward the main laboratory. Alina nodded and continued through to an enormous chamber carved from Europa's subsurface rock. The space was filled with equipment unlike anything the Council races had ever designed. Asymmetrical, almost organic in appearance, following design principles that would seem chaotic to non-human eyes. At the center stood the prototype that would change everything, the first ship of Project Prometheus. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Dr. Raman emerged from behind a testing station, her face lighting up with pride. Now the director of the Prometheus Initiative, Eliza Raman, had spent the past 3 years leading the development of technologies that the Council had deemed impossible. The ship before them was smaller than a standard cruiser, its hull composed of a strange matte material that seemed to both absorb and reflect light simultaneously. Its design defied conventional aerodynamics or space travel principles. There were no visible engines, no external weapon systems, nothing that would identify it as a vessel to Council observers. "Is it ready?" Alina asked, circling the craft. "For the first full test, yes," Raman replied. The miniature tests were successful. The quantum displacement drive functions exactly as the mathematical models predicted. It doesn't just mask the ship from sensors. It temporarily shifts the vessel partially outside normal spacetime. Alina stopped, staring at her old friend. "You're telling me this ship can—" "What exactly?" "Become partially non-existent," Raman said with a grin. "Not invisible, beyond that. For brief periods, it exists in a state that Council sensors literally cannot detect because they're calibrated to detect objects that fully exist in our universe's physical parameters." Major Himura, now Colonel Himura, joined them, carrying a data tablet. "The test flight parameters are set. We'll launch through the maintenance shaft on Europa's dark side, outside the Council observation cone. 20 seconds of quantum displacement will take us beyond the blockade line. We'll collect sensor data on their patrol patterns, then return." Alina studied the mission plan. "And if something goes wrong?" "Then we'll be the first humans to die outside the Sol system in 3 years," Raman replied matter-of-factly. "But the mathematical models are solid. This will work." 2 days later, Alina sat in the pilot's seat of the prototype, now designated Phoenix 1. Colonel Himura served as navigator, with Dr. Raman monitoring the experimental drive systems. The ship hummed with a strange resonance as they prepared for launch. "Phoenix 1, you are cleared for departure," came Admiral Okafor's voice through the secure channel. "Make history, Commander." "Understood, Control." Beginning launch sequence. The ship rose silently through the massive vertical shaft, accelerating smoothly until they emerged onto Europa's surface. Without pausing, Alina pushed the engines to full power, sending them racing away from Jupiter on a trajectory calculated to minimize visibility to Council observers. Approaching displacement point, Himura reported as they neared the predetermined coordinates. "Drive capacitors at full charge." Dr. Raman's fingers flew over her console. "Quantum field stabilizing." "Ready on your mark, Commander." Elena took a deep breath. If their calculations were wrong, they would either be destroyed or immediately detected and captured by Council forces. Either way, humanity's one chance at breaking the quarantine would be lost. Engage quantum displacement. The universe shifted. There was no other way to describe the sensation. It wasn't like entering hyperspace or passing through a jump gate. It felt as though reality itself had become porous, and Phoenix 1 was slipping between its fibers. On the view screen, the stars changed, not disappearing, but taking on a strange, attenuated quality. The ship's sensors continued to function, but the readings were unlike anything Alina had seen before. "Status?" she asked, her voice sounding oddly distant to her own ears. "Displacement field stable," Raman reported, her expression one of wonder. "We're operating at 67% phase shift, enough to be undetectable to Council technology, while maintaining structural integrity. 17 seconds remaining." Elena watched the countdown, barely breathing. When it reached 0, the ship shifted back to normal space with a subtle tremor. The stars solidified on the view screen. "Position?" Elena asked immediately. Himura checked the navigation systems. We're 5 light minutes beyond the blockade line." His voice was hushed with disbelief. It worked. "Scanning for Council ships," Alina ordered, her training taking over despite the momentous nature of what they had just accomplished. The sensors revealed 3 Council patrol vessels within detection range, but none had altered course. Phoenix 1 remained invisible to their systems. "Begin data collection," Alina said. "Let's make this trip count." For the next 30 minutes, they methodically gathered intelligence on the blockade: patrol patterns, communication frequencies, sensor coverage. Most importantly, they confirmed that Council ships had no capacity to detect a vessel using quantum displacement technology. Recovery probe launched. Himura reported as they deployed a tiny autonomous sensor that would continue monitoring the blockade after their departure. "Prepare for return jump," Alina ordered. Same displacement parameters. The journey back was as smooth as their departure. As Phoenix 1 settled back into its berth beneath Europa's surface, the magnitude of what they had accomplished began to sink in. Admiral Okafor was waiting for them, his usually stern face split by an uncharacteristic grin. "Well done," he said simply as they disembarked. "It's just the beginning," Alina replied. "The technology works, but a single small ship isn't enough to change our situation." "No," agreed the Admiral. "But it proves the concept. We're no longer trapped. We just need to scale up the technology." In the debriefing room, they reviewed the mission data with Earth's military and scientific leadership. The quantum displacement drive had performed beyond expectations, and the intelligence gathered on the blockade would be invaluable for future operations. "How soon can we begin construction of additional ships?" asked General Cardoza. Dr. Raman consulted her notes. "With the data from this test flight, we can refine the design and begin production of a small fleet within 6 months. But there's more." She brought up schematics on the main display. The same principles that allow quantum displacement can be applied to other technologies: communications, weapons systems, even larger infrastructure. Elena studied her friend carefully. "What are you suggesting, Eliza?" Raman's eyes gleamed with the intensity that had made her one of Earth's foremost scientists. I'm suggesting we don't just build ships to slip past their blockade. I'm suggesting we create an entirely new technological foundation, one the Council cannot detect, cannot understand, and cannot counter. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. How long? Admiral Okafor asked finally. 5 years, Raman replied without hesitation. 5 years to transform humanity into something the Council cannot imagine. Elena looked around the table, seeing the mixture of hope and determination on every face. Then we have work to do. As the meeting concluded and they filed out of the room, Elena paused at a viewport overlooking the construction base. Below, engineers were already examining Phoenix 1, preparing to incorporate the test flight data into the next generation of vessels. The Council had intended the quarantine as a cage. Instead, they had given humanity the one thing it needed most: the freedom to evolve beyond the constraints of alien expectations. In the darkness beyond the blockade, the galaxy continued its ancient cycles, unaware that within the Sol system, a transformation was beginning, one that would ultimately change the course of galactic history. The return. 5 years into humanity's quarantine, the galaxy had begun to change in ways the Galactic Council never anticipated. Trade routes once managed by human intermediaries had become less efficient. Medical advances had slowed without human researchers making their intuitive leaps. Even entertainment sectors reported declining revenues as the popular and exotic human cultural works were no longer available. Some council members had quietly begun questioning whether the quarantine had been an overreaction. Others remained convinced that humanity represented an existential threat to galactic stability. Neither faction suspected what was truly happening within the Sol system. They would soon find out. On the Council administrative world of Vega Prime, the semi-annual conclave of the 7 elder races was interrupted by an emergency signal. Alarmed security personnel rushed into the chamber, an unprecedented breach of protocol. Honorable Elders, the chief security officer, a reptilian Soren, announced with obvious distress, "We have detected multiple Void Harbinger vessels entering the sector." A murmur of fear rippled through the chamber. The Void Harbingers, mysterious entities from the galactic rim, had been a growing threat for decades. Their ships consumed all matter in their path, converting it into energy to fuel further expansion. 3 outer systems had already been lost to them despite the Council's best defensive efforts. "How many vessels?" demanded the Chief Elder. 17, replied the security officer. "A full assault fleet. They will reach Vega Prime in under 6 hours. Evacuate the planet. Order the Elder immediately. Request immediate defensive support from all available Council forces." "Evacuation protocols are already underway," the officer confirmed. "But our nearest battle group is 8 hours distant. We cannot repel an assault force of this size without reinforcements." The Elders exchanged grave looks. The loss of Vega Prime, with its vast archives and administrative functions, would be a devastating blow to the Council. Yet there seemed no way to prevent it. As emergency orders spread throughout the system, a strange signal appeared on vegan communication channels. It used Council protocols but originated from no known Council vessel. "This is Commander Elena Reyes of the Earth vessel Prometheus," came a human voice, translated automatically into Council standard. "We have detected the Harbinger fleet approaching your position. We are en route to assist. Estimated arrival: 30 minutes. The security officer stared at his communications panel in disbelief. "Impossible. The human quarantine is intact. No vessels have breached the blockade." "Verify this transmission," ordered the Chief Elder. Before verification could be completed, long-range sensors detected a new object approaching the Vegan system at impossible speed. It did not travel through hyperspace or use jump points. It simply appeared to phase in and out of normal space, covering vast distances with each phase shift. The object resolved into a vessel unlike any in Council records. Its design principles were alien even by galactic standards. asymmetrical, with a hull material that seemed to both absorb and emit energy simultaneously. It was large, nearly the size of a council dreadnought, but moved with the agility of a scout ship. "This is impossible," whispered the Arcturian elder. "No species possesses such technology." The human vessel, the Prometheus, took up position between Vega Prime and the approaching Harbinger fleet. Sensors showed it was generating an energy field unlike anything Council scientists had ever recorded. "Vega Prime Control, this is Commander Reyes," came the transmission again. "We recommend you continue evacuation procedures as a precaution, but we will engage the Harbinger fleet. Please maintain safe distance from our operational sphere." The Council's emergency response coordinator couldn't contain his shock. A single vessel against 17 Harbinger ships. They'll be destroyed instantly. But the Saurian elder, who had served as a military strategist before joining the Council, was studying the readings with growing amazement. "I'm not certain they will," he said slowly. "These energy patterns, they're unlike anything we've encountered." The Harbinger fleet entered the system exactly as predicted, 17 massive black vessels shaped like elongated diamonds, trailing streams of consumed matter behind them. They moved with the implacable purpose that had made them so terrifying, unresponsive to communication, immune to conventional weapons, consuming everything in their path. The human vessel approached them directly. "What are they doing?" demanded the chief elder, watching the tactical display in the emergency command center where the Council had relocated. His question was answered as the Prometheus engaged. It didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, the strange energy field surrounding it intensified, extending outward in directed pulses. Where these pulses struck the lead Harbinger vessels, reality itself seemed to distort. The first Harbinger ship simply ceased to exist, not destroyed. There was no explosion, no debris field. One moment it existed, the next, it had been erased from the universe with surgical precision. The second and third Harbingers immediately altered course, their hive intelligence recognizing a genuine threat. They fired their matter dissolution beams, weapons that could reduce a planet's crust to component atoms, directly at the Prometheus. The beams struck the human vessel's energy field and dissipated harmlessly. What followed was unlike any battle the Council observers had ever witnessed. The Prometheus moved with impossible grace, its quantum displacement drive allowing it to partially phase out of reality when attacked, then phase back to launch its strange weapon. One by one, the Harbinger vessels were removed from existence. Within 20 minutes, the Harbinger fleet had been reduced from 17 ships to 3. The survivors, demonstrating the adaptive intelligence that made them so dangerous, began to withdraw. The Prometheus pursued, methodically eliminating each remaining vessel until none remained. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the human ship vanished from Vegan sensors, leaving behind no trace of its passage except for the conspicuous absence of the Harbinger threat. 4 hours later, as Council defense forces finally arrived in the Vegan system, prepared for a battle that would never occur, a formal communication arrived on the Chief Elder's private channel. "Honorable Elder," Commander Reyes appeared on the screen, her expression composed and professional. "I trust the evacuation of Vega Prime is no longer necessary. The Harbinger threat has been neutralized." The Elder studied the human with new eyes. "How did you know of the attack? How did you breach our blockade? What weapon did you employ against the Harbingers?" Elena smiled slightly. "Questions the Council perhaps should have asked before quarantining us. I am authorized by Earth Central Command to offer a formal meeting between human representatives and the Council at a location of your choosing. The time has come to discuss humanity's place in the galaxy, as partners, not prisoners. Partners." The Elder's luminescent skin pulsed with agitation. "After you have developed technologies that violate all Council regulations." "Technologies that just saved Vega Prime," Elena countered calmly. "Technologies your scientists declared impossible because they couldn't conceptualize them. The galaxy is changing, Elder. The Harbingers are only one of many threats emerging from the darkness. The old rules no longer serve any of us." The elder was silent for a long moment. "I will convene an emergency session of the full council," he said finally. "Your assistance today will not be forgotten." 3 days later, the great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled to capacity. Word had spread quickly of the human vessel that had single-handedly destroyed a Harbinger fleet. Representatives from hundreds of worlds demanded information, explanation, reassurance. The 7 elders sat in their traditional inner circle, but the usual ceremonial opening was dispensed with. Instead, the chief elder addressed the assembly directly. "We have called this extraordinary session to address recent developments concerning the species known as humans," he announced. 5 years ago, this council ordered their quarantine for the safety of the galaxy. Today, we must reconsider that decision in light of new information. A stir ran through the chamber as a delegation of humans was escorted in. Alina recognized Admiral Okafor and Dr. Raman among them, along with Earth's political leadership. They took their places at the center of the chamber with calm dignity. Earth's president, Dr. Maya Chen, the former ambassador who had stood in this same spot 5 years earlier, addressed the council. "Honorable elders, representatives of the galaxy, we come before you not as supplicants, but as equals. The quarantine you imposed on humanity was rooted in fear of our differences, fear of our potential. We do not blame you for this fear, but we will no longer accept its consequences." She gestured, and holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing schematics of technologies that made many council scientists gasp audibly. "In isolation, humanity has evolved. We have developed technologies based on principles your scientists deemed impossible. We have created defenses against threats you cannot counter. We have transcended the limitations you sought to impose upon us." The Saurian elder leaned forward. "You speak proudly of violating council law. We speak proudly of fulfilling human potential," Chen replied firmly. "A potential that exists alongside yours, not in opposition to it. The Harbinger threat that was neutralized at Vega Prime is growing. Our deep space sensors have detected 3 more fleets forming at the galactic rim." The chamber erupted in alarmed murmurs. "We can help you," Chen continued once order was restored, "but not as a quarantine species, not as subjects, only as partners with full galactic rights." "And if we refuse?" asked the chief elder. Chen's expression remained calm. "Then we will defend ourselves and any worlds that wish to ally with us individually. The blockade around Sol no longer constrains us. We allow it to remain merely as a courtesy while these discussions take place." This revelation sent another shockwave through the assembly. The Merdani representative, from a species known for their practical wisdom, rose to speak. "If humans can neutralize Harbingers when our combined fleets cannot, I suggest we listen carefully to their terms." For the next several hours, the council chamber buzzed with argument, questions, and negotiations. Alina watched from her position beside Admiral Okafor, observing the shifting alliances and reactions. Some species remained vehemently opposed to humanity's release from quarantine. Others saw the practical benefits immediately. Dr. Raman was kept busy explaining the principles behind human technological breakthroughs to fascinated council scientists, taking care to present the information in ways their different neural architectures could process. By the day's end, a historic agreement had been reached. The quarantine would be lifted immediately. Humanity would share its defensive technologies with the Council, particularly those effective against the Harbingers. In return, humans would receive full galactic citizenship and representation on all Council bodies, including unprecedented access to the Elder Circle as advisors. Most significantly, a new principle was added to the Galactic Charter. Diversity of thought and approach would now be recognized as valuable rather than dangerous. Species would be encouraged to develop along their natural evolutionary and cognitive pathways, with the understanding that different perspectives strengthen the galactic community rather than threatened it. As the formal signing ceremony concluded, Alina found herself standing beside the Saurian elder in a quiet corner of the chamber. Your ship, the Prometheus, the elder said thoughtfully. Named after a figure from human mythology who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. Elena nodded. You've studied our culture. I have always found humans fascinating, even when I voted for the quarantine, the elder admitted. I believe you needed time to mature as a species before joining the wider galaxy. He gestured to the historic agreement being certified nearby. Perhaps it was we who needed to mature. Growth is rarely comfortable, Elena replied. For any species. The elder's scaled face formed what Elena recognized as a smile. What happens now, Commander Reyes? Your kind has evolved beyond our understanding in merely 5 years. Where will you be in 5 more? Elena looked out across the chamber, where humans and aliens were beginning the awkward but essential process of learning to truly communicate as equals. We'll be right here, she said, working alongside you. The stars are vast, elder, and the threats they contain are growing. None of us can face the darkness alone. 1 month later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Earth diplomatic vessel Unity as it approached the Galactic Center for the first time. Beside her, Dr. Rahman watched the spectacular view with wonder. Did you ever imagine we'd be here? Elisa asked quietly. When they cast us out 5 years ago. Elena considered the question. Not exactly here, no. But I knew we wouldn't remain caged forever. It's not in our nature. Below them, the diplomatic team prepared for the first Galactic Congress in which humanity would participate as full members. Earth scientists worked alongside Council researchers, combining their different cognitive approaches to solve problems neither could address alone. The first joint human Council vessels were already under construction, incorporating technologies from multiple species into designs more powerful than any single civilization could create. They meant to contain us, Elena said, watching the stars. Instead, they freed us to become something new. And in doing so, they freed themselves, Elisa added thoughtfully. Beyond the viewport, the galaxy spread out before them. Billions of stars, countless worlds, infinite possibilities. No longer a prison, but a frontier. No longer alien, but home. The Council had outlawed humanity, fearing what they might become. In isolation, humans had indeed transformed, not into the threat the Council feared, but into the allies the galaxy desperately needed. It was only the beginning.